After Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Democrat and advocate for a president-active federal government, won the election against Herbert Hoover by a great margin in 1932, he vowed to use the power of the federal government to put an end to the Great Depression and all of its ties. Roosevelt, though born into the upper class, was praised as a defender of the common people, due to the fact that though he was never very direct about his proposed New Deal before he was elected, he made it clear that he supported direct relief payments for the unemployed, a type of government aid he believed was necessary. In the very beginning of his presidency, starting March 4, 1933, took place a 99-day session of Congress, dubbed the First 100 Days by journalists. During this time, Roosevelt, along with his advisors and the First Lady, set out to heal the American economy. The Democratic Congress passed many legislations with the goal of ending the Great Depression and what became the beginnings of the New Deal, and during which the federal government took on a variety of unprecedented roles that went beyond the bounds of what had before been a fairly conservative government. The New Deal itself is defined as having been a series of programs created in the U.S. to counteract the Great Depression, mostly in the years 1933 to 1938, in which the newly liberal-leaning government expanded its power and influence immensely. With the New Deal, Roosevelt had four main goals. These were to protect American savings and prosperity, provide relief for the sick, elderly, and kids, bring back industry and agriculture, and most important to Roosevelt, to get Americans back to work. To create prosperity, the Gold Reserve Act was passed. This temporarily halted the use of gold standard in the U.S. and forbade gold from leaving the country, therefore allowing the dollar to be used in foreign markets with no set price. This act let the government increase the amount of money in circulation and raise industrial production by 25% until 1937 and by 50% until 1942. To protect savings, the Emergency Banking Act was passed. This legislation allowed for banks to be opened again with help and supervision from the federal government. With this, billions of dollars in gold went back into the reopened banks, and within a month, the bank system was stabilized. It was necessary due to the fact that since the Great Depression had left so many poor, the public maintained an ever-increasing fear to put their money in the banks, and it was not until the passing of this act that their confidence was restored. This was evident in President Roosevelt's fireside chat, in which he said,
"I can assure you that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress."
To provide relief for the sick, elderly, and children was arguably the most well-known legislation for the New Deal, the Social Security Act. This established permanent and universal old age insurance and retirement pensions, as well as benefits for the sick, handicapped, and children coming from families in which the father was not present. Another relief act was the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, or FERA, which helped the urgent needs of the poor and spent $500 million on soup kitchens, blankets, nursery schools, and employment projects. With the renewal of agriculture and industry came the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, which reduced farm production quotas in order to raise crop prices and help rural areas in economic crisis. It also helped farmers innovate and modernize their equipment, and in extreme cases provided them with mortgage in exchange for reduced acreage contracts. Also serving to renew agriculture and industry was the Tennessee Valley Authority. With it, the federal government built dams on the Tennessee River that would help farming and therefore decrease poverty, stop flooding and deforestation, and create hydroelectricity to power nearby homes. Lastly was Roosevelt's main goal, to get Americans working again. This was done by the bulk of the acts of the New Deal. One of these, the National Industry Recovery Act, set up the Public Works Administration, which worked to improve working conditions while hiring unemployed men to work on new infrastructure, including new roads and bridges. Also passed was the Civilian Conservation Corps. This served to hire unemployed men for 6 months for $30 a month to work on conservation projects such as planting trees, preventing erosion, and fighting forest fires. By its end in 1942, it employed 2.5 million men. The FERA also helped with this goal, providing jobs to nearly 500,000 women as well as professionals such as artists, writers, and musicians that lost their jobs due to the Depression. Lastly, the Civil Works Administration, active in the winter of 1933 to 1934, which began as a subdivision of FERA. It was aimed to help and provide short-term jobs to about 4 million unskilled workers and even some teachers. Like the PWA, it led to the improvement and construction of roads, bridges, playgrounds, airports, and even pipelines. Its popularity lied in the fact that instead of providing charity, they were paid minimum wage, which entailed $6.50 to $15 a week. The New Deal did experience some failures, however, and both Republicans and big businesses thought it too costly and believed it went past what the government should be allowed to do. For example, though in its essence it provided new jobs, the National Industry Recovery Act also destroyed many. Because it cut back production and forced wages above market levels, it became more costly for employers to hire and cost hundreds of thousands of African Americans to lose their job. Also, a lot of the jobs created were temporary, so unemployment in the long run was not conquered. There was even another recession accredited to it, the Roosevelt Recession in 1937. Due to it being the most costly government program in American history, many accused it of wasting money. The programs were also criticized for having run on federal taxes that had to be tripled. This meant less money for taxpayers to spend on goods that would have improved the economy, and since these tax items were common everyday items, the middle and lower classes suffered. The taxes also caused for unemployment because business taxes were so high that business owners couldn't afford to hire and expand their companies. Also, many poor black sharecroppers lost their land to flooding of dams due to the Tennessee Valley Authority. Despite all this, the New Deal had its successes. For example, the government provided employment to 2.5 million men through the CCC that wouldn't have had jobs otherwise. Its successes can also be seen in these diagrams showing the economy before and after the New Deal. Overall, Roosevelt restored confidence within the American people, carried out lots of beneficial work in the building of schools, roads, and hospitals, provided jobs for millions in government projects, reduced bank closings and business failures, and increased farm prices, salaries, and wages.